tell you is that as you look at the title for today's sermon about God's accidentals, you need to know that Janet did not make a typo in that title. Because the title says, God's accidentals are barely enough. Now, you may have thought it said barely enough, because that's just what you would assume. But barely is not spelled that way. It's B-A-R-E-L-Y. On purpose, that's what I told Janet to type. God's accidentals are barely enough. And Lord willing, by the time that we're done with the sermon this morning, you'll understand why it's titled Barely Enough. Okay, so enough for the sermons before the sermon. Let's pray this morning. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity of being here today and gathering together to worship you in song and in giving, and even worship you in listening to announcements in the life of the church. And we pray now as we come to worship you through the opening of your word that our minds may be open as well to listen, to hear, to understand, that our hearts may be open to receive it, and that our wills may be available to obey it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, let me just give you a quick review from last week. We can't review all of the book of Ruth all of the time, but at least from last week you recall that Naomi had heard that food was in Bethlehem once again, that God had provided for them through the famine and brought to them a harvest. And so Naomi decided to return back to Bethlehem. She and her two daughters-in-law began to make the trip to Moab, but there came a point, a crossroads of decision, where Naomi stopped and she implored her daughters-in-law to return to their family, to return to their gods. And so that was one of the key things that we saw last week. And we saw last week that Naomi may have tried to cover up by having her daughters-in-law return to their families, thinking that if I return to Bethlehem alone, perhaps no one will know that I allowed my sons to marry Moabite women. Plus, she may have thought, for good reason, that these Moabite women would never be accepted and welcome in Bethlehem, and neither would she if she were associated with them. So Naomi tried to cover up before she went back to Bethlehem. We also noted that Orpah gave up. She did turn around, and she went back to her family and to her gods. We know that Orpah's name meant stubborn or stiff-necked, or to turn back, and she did. And so Orpah gave up that devotion to Naomi, and she returned. But we also know that even though Naomi tried to cover up and Orpah gave up, Ruth stood up. And that great pledge of allegiance to her mother-in-law, she had put off her former life, and she said she was putting on a new life, a covenant relationship with the God of Israel. And of course, those famous words that I said were spoken not to her groom, but to her mother-in-law in chapter 1, where she said, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. That's what Orpah did, turn back from her. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. And the next following words are really for us the assurance that Ruth did accept the covenant God. She accepted a new way of life, because she said, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. So Ruth stood up. It reminds me of 2 Corinthians 5:17. You know that verse probably well, or at least when I tell you to it. It talks about how Paul said, the old is gone, the new has come. And that's the declaration that Ruth made. The old has gone. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to turn back. I'm standing up to make a declaration of a new life with the Lord, with Naomi, with his people in Bethlehem. And Paul uses the put off and put on terminology a lot. We put off our old way of life. We put on our new way of life. And so now we come to Act 2 in this story, in chapter 2. And let me just read it. We're going to take the whole chapter this morning. So let me read it first. We won't take every single word of it through the sermon standing, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they called back. Boaz asked the foreman of his harvesters, "Whose young woman is that?" The foreman replied, "She is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please, let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She went into the field and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this she bowed down with her face to the ground, and she exclaimed, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord," she said. "You have given me comfort and have spoken kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servant girls." At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here. Have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men. "Even if she gathers among the sheaves, don't embarrass her. Rather, pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her." So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. And Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one at whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I work with today is Boaz," she said. "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She added, "That man is our close relative. He is one of our kinsman redeemers." Then Ruth the Moabitess said, "He even said to me, 'Stay with my workers until they finish harvesting my grain.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with his girls, because in someone else's field you might be harmed." So Ruth stayed close to the servant girls of Boaz to glean until the barley and the wheat harvest were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Well, Act 2 has 3 scenes in it. Just like when you go to a play, you have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, but within each act there are particular scenes, and so you have changes of scenes. Let me just tell you what these 3 scenes are, or where they start as we work our way through here. The first scene we can title, "Let Me Find Favor." In verse 2, we read where she was asking Naomi to go out and then see if she could find someone who would give her some favor to glean in the field. So scene 1, it begins in verse 2, "Let me find favor." Scene 2 begins in verse 10, and that we can title, "Why Have I Found Such Favor?" And then scene 3 begins in verse 13, "May I continue to find favor." May I find favor? And when she did, she asked the question, "Why have I found such favor?" And once she was given the explanation, she said, trust and faith in the covenant God. And yet here's what she's doing. She's putting herself in a position to allow God to work in her life. She just didn't stay in bed and say, God, do something. She said, I'll do something. I'll put myself in a position and I'll let God direct my life and perhaps direct me to a place where he can provide food for us through this gleaning process. I have a good friend at Grace Church. He owns a trucking company over in Morton. And he was on our board for many years. And we were, whenever we'd come to make a decision and we'd be debating or discussing the decision, and maybe we had discussed for month after month after month, finally Dave would say, gentlemen, you can't steer a parked truck. You have to at least put it in creeper gear and get it moving. And this is what Naomi did. She decided she wasn't going to be parked in her bed, parked in the house. She was going to get up, do something, and let God show his hand of providence to her. Let me ask you the question this morning. Are you sitting around waiting for God to do something? Or are you putting yourself in a position where God can actually use you to do something? Are you making yourself available? Maybe you don't know what it's for, but are you at least saying, Lord, I'm available. Show me the way. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do something for you. Or are you a parked truck? If you are, at least put that thing in low gear and take the first step and say, here I am, Lord. Use me. Well, Naomi is going to risk ridicule and possible physical harm by going out into these harvest fields. God had made a law about gleaning years before this to show his concern and his compassion for the poor. And you can read about it in Leviticus. Leviticus 19 is one place you can read about the law of gleaning. But landowners were to leave a border around the edges of the field where the poor and the marginalized of society could come and pick up grain for themselves. Nobody picked it up for them. They had to come and do it themselves, but it was available if they would come and pick up grain for themselves. And gleaning involved an honest endeavor. It involved initiative, and this is what Ruth was showing. Initiative, an honest approach to work, and so it involved an honest endeavor and initiative. It's kind of the beginning of the I will work for food movement, we might say in this particular setting. Ruth is teaching us by her attitude and her actions that any opportunity God gives us to obtain what we need is God's undeserved mercies from the giver of every good thing. And here was an opportunity that God was giving her to receive what she needed and what Naomi needed. But lest you think that gleaning was glamorous work and it was a great way to get a tan, it wasn't. It was very difficult work. And what Ruth was doing is akin, though not exactly like that, but it's akin to collecting aluminum cans. I was interested that John mentioned that this morning. That's that we were talking about, aluminum cans. Well, it's kind of the same thing that she was spending her day in the ditches along the roadside to pick up aluminum cans to sell them for recycling. But in this case, she was actually picking up grain. Well, verse 3 says this, and by the way, we'll move faster. We're not going to go through every 23 verses here because you're looking at your watch and I'm looking at mine, and that means absolutely nothing, as I told you a few weeks ago. But let's move on. It says that she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz. As it turned out, or we might say, as luck would have it, she just happened to stumble onto the property that was owned by Boaz, this man of standing. Today we smile and we say, an accident? Dumb luck? Of course not. It wasn't. The author is offering a peek into God's hidden providential hand in this accidental encounter, as we might say. But it herself available to God. And he then took her availability, her willingness, guided her to the very place where he wanted her to go. Remember Naomi's prayer for her daughters-in-law in verse 8 of chapter 1? She said, go back to your families so you may find kindness again. Her prayer for her daughters-in-law was God's favor. Except she was trying to send them back to their families, and Orpah went back. But in this case, Ruth didn't go back. And we see here that Naomi's prayer is beginning to be answered for Ruth because God is showing his favor to her. He's showing his kindness to her. A preacher by the name of Sinclair Ferguson has said this. He said, in the midst of our confusion and the happenstances and the surprises of life, those are the kind of those dumb luck things of life, the happenstances of life and the surprises of life, a sovereign God in heaven is there, whose hand is upon us every moment of the day. A God who reigns over every inch of the universe in which we live. So we know that nothing just happens. Not even a sparrow falls to the ground without his knowledge. That is why we can be quiet and confident, not because we know exactly what God is doing in his unpredictable world, but because we know that what is unpredictable to us has already been predicted by him. Well, we see in verse 4 of chapter 2, she not only arrived at the right place, she arrived at the right time, because it says that she arrived in the field, but just then Boaz arrived. Not just at the right place, but just at the right time. Just then, as it just so happened, by dumb luck, no, by God's intervention, she arrived at the right time at the very moment that Boaz appeared. Another coincidence? Hardly. Well, in verses 5 through 9 that we read that Boaz was talking to the foreman. This young woman caught Boaz's eye. He didn't recognize her, but perhaps he did notice that she was young and perhaps very beautiful. And so he inquired to the foreman about who is this, and the foreman said she is had come early in the morning and had asked permission to glean, just like she asked permission from Naomi to go and glean. She said, may I go and find favor? The foreman says that she actually asked permission to be in the field, and she had found favor. She was granted privilege. In other words, she was granted status. She was granted acceptance and access to the field. She found protection. We read here where Boaz said that he had told his young men not to touch her. And so he provided for her protection in the workplace. And thus we come to the end of scene 1. May I find favor. We come down then to verses, verse 10, and it said that she had said, why have I found such favor? Why have I found such favor? We know that she was granted acceptance because it said that she was going to be able to follow the servant girls and to go through the field after the servant girls. She had been given access to the company drinking fountain in verse 9. Whenever you were thirsty, you can go and get a drink of water. You can have access to the company drinking fountain. And all of this has overwhelmed Naomi, Ruth, where she asked in verse 10, why have I found such favor? She was looking for favor. She was granted favor. But all she thought she was going to get was a favorable acceptance to glean in the field, and all of a sudden she's put under the company's anti-sexual harassment protection policy. She was given access to the water cooler. She was told that she could follow his own personal servant girls, and all of a sudden she says, why have I found such favor? She says, I'm a foreigner. She found favor that she was looking for, but it exceeded her expectations. So she says to Boaz, why? You see, Israel's disposition toward I'm sure the text messages were flying again. This gal's out in Boaz's field, which, by the way,